Hello everyone. So in a week's time from today, ooh, okay, that's better. In a week's time from today, I'm gonna be graduating college. As you can see behind me, I'm gonna be graduating UCLA, and I just wanted to reflect on a few things while I walk around. Uh, I think my college experience was probably way different than most other people's college experiences. So I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about my opinion on colleges in general and what I think about it and whether I agree with the system or not. Because I know many people, they follow the system of going to college and getting a job or whatever afterwards. So I'll discuss all that stuff. Uh, but yeah, I want to start off with my experiences. So I transferred to UCLA as a junior last year, sorry, 2 years ago, 2023. And I skipped a year of college actually. So I transferred from community college to UCLA. I skipped a year. So maybe I did have slightly different experience than some freshmen do, but I still feel like I exposed myself to a lot of things. So my first year in college, I decided to be a little more social. So I stayed over at the transfer dorms, and I really liked it for the first few months. I really liked it. We had a very social floor. We had a lot of amazing people. I initially really loved my roommates, all my neighbors, and it was a cool experience. But after that first quarter, I don't know. I still am debating whether I'm an introvert or an extrovert. But after that first quarter, things changed. Um, I was still pretty social, but I feel like I was kind of getting tired of the big social life from my dorm. I don't know. Maybe I didn't really have too many similarities, even though I think I did probably have quite a few similarities with others. But I remember that winter quarter was a little tough. But I remembered one lesson I learned from that winter quarter is that I didn't really like being indoors too much. I don't know about others, but personally, I I feel like I'm more of an active person. So for me, I gotta get out. Whether it's doing some physical exercise or working on some projects or whatever. And I remember during winter quarter, I took 3 classes last year, but I stayed indoors often. I didn't really. Maybe I attended 1 to 2 lectures. I think I had between 2 to 3 lectures per day, so I did that slash discussions. But I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't really enjoy that winter quarter. I remember, uh, and that spring quarter, I didn't really enjoy it either. We did have the encampments here, but I don't think that really changed anything, honestly, from my experience. Um, and I don't know because I joined a frat my spring quarter, so that was pretty alright. Even though I don't drink, smoke, or do any of that stuff, I joined a frat briefly for a few weeks before I dropped it because I was the only one that didn't, drink or whatever, and I felt like an outlier, and people looked at me weirdly, so I dropped it. But I gotta say, the social life at frats at UCLA, if any of you guys are coming over, it's pretty hardcore. I think I had the best social life when I was at the frat. I joined a few clubs here too, but I had nowhere near the amount of socializing I had in clubs as I did in the frat. So, um, highly recommend. But that did not work out. And I remember I have my friend had this good saying about UCLA that during the fall everyone is just, trying to settle in. During winter everyone becomes friends, and during spring everyone hates each other. Uh, and from my experience these past 2 years, I think that's pretty accurate. Even though this second year it didn't happen as much, maybe because I was a lot more introverted, which I'll talk about later. Uh, but yeah, like all my quarters last year, I socialized quite a bit. I traveled to different places. We went to Rodeo Drive. I remember during the fall quarter we went to um, Little Japantown. I forgot what it's called. We went to we traveled to Westwood often to go to the movie theater, and I don't know, we were pretty adventurous. We went to the Getty Museum, I remember that. But I did not really. I still something was empty here. You know what I mean? Like I had school, I had friends, I had such a social life, traveling, whatever. But something was still missing. And I don't know. I thought I was kind of keeping myself busy, but I still didn't understand what was empty. So I came in this year. And this year I had basically no friends. I was by myself, all alone. But I found activities that I love to do. I started going to the gym during the fall, and I started taking my diet seriously during the winter, and I ended up having a successful bulk. I bulked up about 20-30 pounds. I don't know how much of it was water weight, probably quite a bit. But that was a big thing. And again, I don't know how much muscle or fat or whatever I actually gained. I probably gained quite a bit of water weight. But that was a pretty cool experience. I really loved that. And also besides that, I was working on my own projects, whatever startup stuff on the side I was doing. And I only had one project that generated money from any of the projects I worked on this year, and it wasn't really the most amount of money. It wasn't really that much, honestly. But the amount I learned from this was pretty insane, and honestly, it was great. And I feel like I'm probably more of an extroverted person, but this year, being by myself and being alone and trying out all these cool new things, whether it's working on my projects nonstop or going to the gym, or I remember my first quarter, usually, you take 3 classes, if you're STEM or whatever. I took 4 classes. So that was a pretty cool experience. And honestly, I don't know, looking back at it, I probably loved this year way more than I did last year. I feel like I'm just a happier and better person. I feel better. I don't know if I look better, but this year I just felt like I had much more of a purpose than last year. And I don't know, I don't really feel as empty as I did last year for some reason. I don't know why. Because last year I remember I explored the campus quite often. Right here we have the Fowler Museum. Remember we went there quite often. But I guess you gotta know yourself if you're coming into college. You gotta experiment, because everyone is different. I feel like most of the time we follow what others do, even if we necessarily wouldn't prefer it ourselves, and it is not the correct path for us. And I think that's what I did last year, because there was this whole stigma about college experience. And I remember my uncle, I said that I may skip a few years of college, and my uncle would be like, well, you're missing out on the college experience. And I think one of the main reasons why I actually wanted to go to college was to try out the experience. But what I realized is everyone has their own experience. Everyone has what they love to do. And everyone is different in their own way. So if you don't really try stuff out, and if you're influenced by peer pressure by others, then you don't really learn more about yourself. And I think that's what matters a lot, learning about yourself. Because at the end of the day, you are the only person, that can make yourself happy, or, figure yourself out, or improve yourself, or whatever. No one's gonna do it for you. No one's got your back. You're in this by yourself. And you may have all of these friends, and you may feel comfortable and whatever, and this and that. But maybe it's fake comfort. Like what I had last year, when during the fall quarter, I felt like I had everything. I felt amazing. But then it all came crashing for some reason, and I don't know why. But luckily, I feel like I've learned more about myself through experimenting, and I feel like it's important to experiment, because if you don't experiment, then otherwise you don't really know what you like to do, what you don't like to do, and what you're good at and what you're not good at. And if you learn your potential or what you love to do, then that's basically like your superpower. Like, for example, if someone loves doing music, it's therapeutic for them, they love it, and maybe people like it, maybe they don't, whatever. But if they find it, and if it helps them in life or in general or whatever, or even if people love it or whatever, then it's kind of like a superpower. So I feel like this year, gym was probably a little bit more of my superpower, because I remember whenever I was feeling down, or whenever I had it hard, I would just go to the gym. I'd work out for about 1 hour to 1 hour and a half, but I had very hard workouts. I believe in hard workouts, and that just completely cleared my mind. Just cleared it. And I got criticized quite a bit for my time at the gym. I remember my roommate thought I was pretty crazy. He actually said, Ben, your progress is going to plateau if you're going to keep going this way, which it never ended up happening. But I always believed that if I'd go to the gym, and if I'd push myself, and if I do drop sets, and if I'd keep doing it, and if I do it every day, and then later on I added on a diet, and if I go on a diet, and if I do it every day, then I'd be successful in what I do, and I'd like it quite a bit. And in the moment, right now I'm not really on a diet. I still go to the gym, but I'm not on a diet. But I remember in the moment, I'd eat the same food every single day, and I did it nonstop for quite a few months in a row. And in the moment, it sucked. It sucked. I also went to the gym every day before. Now I go to the gym 2 days, do 1 day off, 2 days, 1 day off. But I went to the gym every day. I was sore every single day. I had class. Now I'm tired of eating the study sandwiches, because I've gotten too much. I didn't like them in the first place, but I still pushed myself to eat it for a few months, and it was hard. And now I don't want to eat any study sandwich anymore, and I feel like food is kind of numb sometimes to me. But that experience, looking back at it, it's an amazing experience. Like, it's amazing. I don't know, like in the moment it was super tough, and it was super hard. And still right now, right now I'm prioritizing more on my projects and startups and whatever. And in the moment, when I work on it, it's tough. But I feel like looking back at it, it feels amazing. But I feel like this is the case with everything in life. Like, I remember during COVID a few years ago, I wasn't as busy. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm naturally a more busy person, but I feel like it may apply to quite a few people, including some of my family members who are not as busy. Um, and I was not as busy, I was relaxing quite often. That was in 2020 when school came out. I remember most of us didn't really care about school anymore because it was online and they were still trying to figure things out, and they didn't have tests figured out, homework figured out, etc. So, a lot of us didn't really care about school. And so I I was relaxing quite often. The only thing I had going for me was I'd go on a hike with my mom, but except for that, that was it. And looking back at it, that specific moment where I was relaxing was probably some of my worst years of my life. And it wasn't, I wasn't scared of COVID. I got COVID quite a few times. I wasn't scared of COVID. The thing I hated the most was that I was relaxing. Looking back at it, like in the moment, maybe it didn't really strike me as much, but looking back at it, I hated that moment because I was relaxing instead of pursuing something that gave me purpose and that made me better. But I remember before that whole thing happened during the sophomore year of high school, before COVID started, I was pushing myself quite often, whether it came to wrestling. I started to become a better wrestler for our high school team. Whether it came to school or other things, I started to focus on school more. I got better grades. I remember during that moment, looking back at it, I feel great. But in that moment, it sucked because I had to push myself, and I had to basically stimulate my mind and keep working hard towards the goals I had. And I remember, I think it was during sophomore year too, where I won a few chess tournaments, and I was feeling pretty good about myself, even though I was working nonstop. So I feel like that's one of the lessons I've learned too. And I know many people here, they love to socialize, whether it's, on their free time, they like to maybe go to Rocco's, or maybe it's girls like to go to frat parties because guys, you have to go, you have to get an invitation if you want to go to a frat party. But I feel like looking back, what makes me feel fulfilled is when I worked hard towards a goal. And I remember my mom said something similar. She kept saying, I really like those good old times back then when she'd work really hard, to provide for us. She had a job. I think sometimes she had multiple jobs, and she she wanted to put us to bed. She was constantly traveling, and it was hard for her. But she said, looking back, those were the good old times. Those were the good old times. And I feel like that's true. I feel like any hard moment in life, any hard moment is hard in the moment, but afterward, if you're still alive to see it, then looking back at it, it's an amazing moment. So, yeah. In terms of if I find college useful or not, I definitely developed a lot of great skills here. I gotta say, I figured out how to learn better. I figured out how to prioritize my time better. But as I said, my college experience is way different than a lot of other people's, especially this year. So, I honestly, looking back at it, if you have your work ethic set out or whatever, which most of you probably don't, but if you do, then if you have something going for you, maybe you can pursue it. But otherwise, I think college is not a necessarily bad idea because I feel like it's very useful for developing your work ethic if you want to develop it. And as I said before, I feel like peer pressure is the worst thing that can get to you because, like, no one is susceptible to peer pressure. Like, you can get influenced by anyone around you. But if you're not thinking, and if you're just getting influenced by them without seeing what you really want to do and pursuing that, then that's a problem. And I feel like that's how most people are living. And if you're doing that, then you gotta stop and reevaluate. You gotta see what you want to do, and you gotta do what you want to do. Obviously you gotta try stuff out, because sometimes you may try this thing out and you may say, oh, this thing sucks and I made a mistake and whatever, and it's totally normal. I mean, I feel like in life making mistakes is totally normal. I feel like that's the whole point of life. I mean, if you're not learning, then you're not growing, right? So I guess that's my verdict on UCLA and what I thought about this whole experience. And I honestly don't know if I'm gonna miss this place, but I learned so much that I'm honestly really grateful. And I'm not really grateful to UCLA, I'm just really grateful to the college experience itself. Because I had the experience I wanted, and I enjoyed it. But I feel like it's not really even, it doesn't even go to college experience. I feel like it goes to life experience. Like, whatever life experience you want, you can make it. Just don't get pressured by others to do what you want to do. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys later. Peace.